Today we are very honored to have with us Russell Pearce, who is a state senator from District 18 and the president of the Senate. Russell has been around a long time. He's a fifth-generation Arizonan and has had numerous positions, and we'll get into that in a minute in his background. Obviously, Russell is in the press a lot, and welcome to the show, and we're pleased to have you.
Dennis, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm always love to be here. Love to talk to the public. Good grief. Isn't it nice that once in a while you can get the truth out?
Yeah, well, that's what we're going to do in this hour, I hope. And you have been, of course, as we understand, a lightning rod for a lot of people who want to take out on you, it seems to me, a lot of their frustration with the law. And let's get right into it. First, I would like to educate some of the listeners, though, Russell, if you don't mind, about your background, because you have a fascinating background that a lot of people don't know or realize. So if you take a minute first before we get into the issues and talk about who you are.
Well, again, I'm Russell Pearce, born and raised in Mesa. I'm one of 13 children, blended family. My wife's one of 7. We tease about it a little bit. We have about 100 nephews and nieces between us. They all vote.
I was going to say, I think you would say 100 yeah. Children. That would be a real feat. Yeah,
really.
Okay.
Yeah, even at my
you have 5 children, right?
5 children, 14 grandchildren. But when we do see, as I said, we have about 100 nephews and nieces between us. We do check their registration, make sure they vote. That's how I'm able to stay in office.
Right. And that they're legal.
And they're all legal. And they're all card-carrying Americans.
Right.
They love this republic, and we take time to teach our children about the founding principles of this wonderful country.
Now, you grew up as I understand, in a very poor household, and worked your way up. And my understanding is you wanted to be a doctor at one point in time. Is that true?
It is true. All my high school career, I dreamed about being able to go to med school. But when you're a poor boy, and we were very poor. I can define poor for folks. We lived in houses that were condemned. We lived in 8 different houses just on South McDonald. We used to tease my dad about they're wanting rent again. My dad was an alcoholic. We loved him. My dad was an alcoholic, and my mom raised him and us kids. So we were very poor. I sold mistletoe downtown Mesa, ran around Mesa barefooted, sold papers downtown. My favorite place was the Green Frog. 3 or 4 beers, I'll buy 2 papers from you. Especially when you're a little tiny kid.
Yeah.
Looks like you always need a haircut.
Right.
And
those days are gone.
Those days are gone. But you know what? I have no complaint. My mom, as I've said many, many times, was a saint. My mom was such a wonderful, wonderful lady. And it's not any of us children that don't agree. She was killed in a car accident up in Utah a few years ago, and that was really hard because my grandchildren don't get to visit with their great grandmother, and my children missed her. So you always were, that's sad. But she was a wonderful lady. I never remember going to bed that she wasn't up working, and I don't remember getting up that she wasn't already up working and doing things. My mom was a worker, and she taught us good values.
Well, you're a worker too. As I understand it, you work very, very hard late tonight, don't you?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. And you know what? And I get that. I think that work ethic from my mom. Same with my values. Very first fist fight I had as a young man, I think I was in first grade, and it was with my next door neighbor. It was over Eisenhower and Stevenson. I can
only guess who you were supporting.
And I don't even know that I knew anything but the name. But I knew my mom liked him, and that meant he was the best guy.
I just read something about Eisenhower that sticks with me that I thought was interesting. There was something about Barry Goldwater, and what it was, Russell, was somebody, I think it was Gary Hart, wrote Goldwater a long-winded memo on something. And Goldwater wrote him back and said, you know what, I'm not going to read this memo, it's too long. The one thing that Eisenhower told me that I remember that stuck with me, he said, that I thought was the best advice he ever gave me was, if you can't say it in one page, don't bother saying it at all, because you got nothing to say.
Well, that's a nice thing about being short and succinct.
Right.
But, I appreciate that. I have a great love, and I do get scoured on a regular basis by the left. I don't know why a guy's a bad guy for standing up for the rule of law. I don't know why. Other than I do know why, unfortunately, because they're after not only cheap labor, but cheap votes, and they want to change the political makeup of America.
Let's get into that. I was going to ask you that, but while you're on that, it just shocks me sometimes as to you're a complete lightning rod, and of course I appreciate that. But why? I mean, I don't intellectually or otherwise understand it. I mean, I guess I do understand it, like you said. There's a certain position or block of people that are just rabid on certain points. But what I don't get is, and maybe you can help educate me on this, your position is not a racist position. Your position, as I understand it, is anything but a racist position. You're saying, look, you got to be in the country legally, bottom line, to make it real simple, right? That's it. And if you're not here legally, then you got to go home and figure a way to get here legally, right? That's your basic position.
Well, it is. And first
why
of
does
all,
that offend people?
I don't know. First of all, the most generous nation in the world. We allow more people legally in the United States than all the other developed nations combined.
Yeah.
But you have to have a permission slip. Just like you have to have permission to come into my home, you have to have permission to enter my country. And here's what we ignore.
Well, can I enter Mexico without any documentation and expect to be treated well there?
They don't know how to spell civil rights.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. You know,
So I don't get it.
It'd be tough. You know what? Here's what's sad though. During the debate, let's take 1070 for example. And again, I'm not a hateful guy. I don't know of anybody I hate. In fact, my son
Well, I got a few
was
for
shot.
you, but
My son was shot by an illegal alien. I have 2 boys in law enforcement.
Yeah, I
I
heard
spent
that.
my career in law enforcement. Well, I don't hate that young man that shot him. A bad guy, wanted on homicide charges, involved in drug trafficking. He's a bad guy. And that was before he shot my son, wanted on those charges. And my son almost died in that gun battle, you know. In fact, that's an interesting story. I'll be quick about it. But I was standing at the podium, literally at the podium, giving a speaking on this very issue, Brookings Institute in D.C., when I was in 04, and I was handed a note from home. It said, emergency, ASAP, call home. Immediately, wow, I'm thinking, grandchild. The first thing that went through my mind is I've got a grandchild, swimming pool accident, car accident. You know, I knew it was something serious.
So you were already on this issue then, because a lot of people have said that's what galvanized you into this whole immigration issue. You're already on that.
I was on that issue.
Okay, well, that's important.
I was speaking about that at 04. I've been on this for over 25 years.
Okay.
Over a quarter of a century. But anyway, when I was speaking and standing at that podium, had that note, I stepped off and I grabbed the phone, called home, and says, Sean's been shot. I don't know how bad. He's being air vac to a local hospital, Russell. I'll call you back when I get more information. I'm headed to the hospital now. Sheriff's office picked her up, was taking her. And so when I was arranging a plane home, I called back about an hour later. We get a phone. And she said, you're not going to believe this. It's going to make you mad, Russell. He was shot by an illegal alien. I said, you know, Ann, it doesn't make me mad that he was shot by an illegal alien. Not at the young man anyway. He's a bad guy. He was wounded also. Not life-threatening, I understand, but he was in the hospital. I said, you know what I'm really upset with? My government. That should have never happened.
Right. Well, that's right. That's what it's all about, really. And unfortunately, there are a percentage of people who are crossing the border. They aren't just here for good reasons. I was in court the other day. Some guy was sneaking over to help his little girl up here to pay for her. He's a baker and so forth. He was put away for about 2 years. That's a sad story. He's obviously not a criminal. But there are a percentage of people that come across that are, and that's the problem.
3 out of 10 have felony or criminal convictions already crossed this border today. You've got the gangbangers. You've got the largest, most violent gangs in America made up of illegal aliens. You've got the drug smugglers, the human smugglers, the child molesters. These are not the same. In fact, I've got so many stories. But
we're going to take a break in a minute, but if you can just wrap up, that would be great.
During the debate of 1070, a good friend of mine, and he was a friend, Bob Kretz, was murdered on the border. You know, and what a shame. I know Sue, and I've been down the riding horseback with Sue on occasion on that border. So anyway, after he was murdered, and during that debate, I had all the rangers come up from Sassabee to Douglas, the span of that entire border. I wanted them to tell their story, because they were telling me, and have told me in many cases, not the same as used to be.
Yeah.
And they admit they've had trespassers for years. Some have even hired them. But they told their stories one after the other and said, oh, so it's not the same.
Yes.
Just before committee, they said, our dogs' throats are cut, our animals are slaughtered, our fences are torn down, our water lines are destroyed, our homes are invaded. Some of them board their windows and their doors like they did in the 1800s. They hear noise at night, they pray for daylight.
Well, look what's going on in Mexico itself. It's no surprise. Well, we're going to continue on with this conversation with Russell Pearce, President of the State Senate, in a few minutes after these messages. So we'll be back shortly. Hang on, and we'll continue this conversation.